Week 2 of Set Championships has come to an end, and what I believe was the greatest thing to ever happen to Disney Lorcana. Set Championships were a huge success, far and wide, national, global. Everybody had an absolute blast going to and competing at Set Championships to win stitches, playmats, and whatever else was on the line. I cannot wait to discuss all of the data from Week 2 today. Let's get right into it. The breakdown, the deck list, all that and more. Let's go. Lorcana Set Champs Week 2 top 8s. 12 different variations of ink combinations made top 8 this week, which is an insane number. It really showcases that any given deck had a chance to win you a Stitch Rockstar Enchanted promo, which is awesome to hear. Yes, we can see the numbers here skewed a little bit on one side, but it still is showcasing that so many different decks had the option to be successful in these tournaments. Ruby Amethyst coming in with 43 or 44. Emerald Steel just at number 30. Ruby Sapphire in the mid-teens. Amethyst Emerald about 15. Sapphire Steel. Amethyst Steel coming in around 5 to 6. Ruby Amber. Ruby Emerald, Amber Steel, Sapphire Amethyst, Amber Amethyst, and Amber Emerald, all finishing with top 8s, but less than 5. If we look at this from a side-by-side comparison, you can see here that Week 2 had a lot less decks in general, but I do think that that has to do with the fact that I'm recording this up front this week. Last week when I was recording the Set Champs, it was later on in the week, so there's probably a lot less recorded Set Champs. But hey, shout out to inkdex.com for all of the wonderful information that's there that I was able to utilize quickly. I still think it's plenty of data, and I still believe there's plenty more to showcase from this data. I honestly think that these stats are pretty great. It's showcasing that just about anything has a chance, which I really do love. You can see here from Week 1 to Week 2, there's some dips or some drop-offs, but honestly, I'm recording this way earlier in the week, so there is less information out there that I had last week when we were doing this. It really was fun to see the numbers change, see some of the drop-offs here. You can see kind of like Sapphire Steel drop-off. You can see Emerald Amethyst kind of rise up, which I think is really cool. That's really great. We're going to showcase some of the winners a little later on in the video and see the differences between Week 1 and Week 2 with them as well. But for now, how about we just get right into some of the winning deck lists in some of the biggest set championships this weekend. Emerald Steel was one of the most successful decks from this past weekend, and it did come in many flavors. This particular list in front of us here is showcasing a few cards that really haven't seen too much love, I would say, through the course of the last few weeks. But Flynn Rider's Floodborn with the evasive, with 4 lore, and of course the ability of losing lore for the amount of cards in your opponent's hand. Other cards to stick out here, the one of Lucifer, the Singleton Hypnotize. The concept of only playing 3 Mr. Smee is quite interesting to me. Utilizing the Robin Hoods is all great and dandy. Donald Duck and Daisy Duck. The one Along Came Zeus. There are a lot of specific decisions points being made here within this particular Emerald Steel's deck design. Emerald Steel has really started to showcase that it has kind of some opportunities and choices. I think what's really interesting about a lot of the decks that were successful the past couple weeks is they are truly versatile and can really mold and fit to the local metagame that you were expecting. A lot of common things that we're going to see moving forward is that these decks had educated choices based on their metagames, and because of that, probably saw success. This version had Robin Hoods. I've seen versions without Robin Hoods. I've seen Bucky versions be successful. I've seen more aggressive versions be successful, more control versions be successful. There are so many different ways to now build this probably 45 to 50 card core, very, very similar to the Ruby Amethyst core that we've been talking about forever, if I'm being honest. This is Emerald Steel discard core is finally starting to showcase like, hey, there's something here, and there's definitely different ways to build this and different ways to surprise your opponents. So pretty awesome to see Emerald Steel really start rising to the top within the Inklands metagame. Let's get into the next deck list. This was one of 3 Amber Steel Songs decks that I could see that found a win this weekend. And it was really nice to see that it showed up in a 47-player tournament. While this list has really started to showcase what the uninkables are in it that really define it, we continuously see different versions of it be successful. Here we have the Sleepy's flute version finding a way to pick up a really nice win, whereas in the past we've seen Pride Lands or Lanterns. And for what it's worth, there were plenty of decks this weekend for Amber Steel that picked up stitches that did have Pride Lands and Lanterns. Definitely one to focus on moving forward. Do I think the others have a chance? Absolutely. But when you start looking at upcoming events and the likely player base within them, going and searching up major events in recent past that decks were winning or most successful at is a point where most metagame players start. So this particular list, picking up a win in one of the bigger set champs, is definitely something to be recognized. Flutes are always on the table, and I don't think they're going away anytime fast. I do believe that it's kind of more metagame dependent. There are more flaws to this deck in some of its matchups now, so I do not think this deck is as much of a slam dunk and prevalent as it was in the past, but it definitely has a ton of games where it just does things that your opponent cannot compete with in any fashion. And when you start taking all those things into consideration, then it's really hard to not just say, hey, maybe I feel like playing Amber Steel this weekend and singing the flutes all the way to victory. Ruby Sapphire picked up 5 wins this past weekend. This was the largest win that I could find by a deck reported. This particular list won a 32-player event at Saga Concepts. What I can say about this list that I really do enjoy, I found that most of the time Ruby Sapphire is having a really tough time closing out games and winning in time in best of 3 series. And because of that, committing to 4 Bell is definitely where I would love to be. Having this world where you just have so many ways to gain 5 lore, which is 1/4 of what you need in a given game to win. Really just telling your opponent, like, hey, you need to answer my bells. Because if you don't answer my bells, I'm just going to gain 5 lore. And before you know it, I might surprisingly gain 10 lore with 1 lucky dime. This deck, since the pack, again, has been on the upswing, on the uprise, a ton of success through tournaments all over. I do think that there is a world that the time limit in best of 3 is playing a huge dividends to this list. A lot of the players I had seen this weekend playing this deck were going to time, getting unintentional draws. So while I think this deck is absolutely a force to be reckoned with, and it might be better fitted for the 2-game format than the best of 3 format simply due to time, because it is not a deck that wins very quickly. It's definitely a deck that has to grind out your opponent, has to remove them of all resources, and then kind of lucky dime your way into a win, or very slowly win through 3 or 4 turns of the Tamatoa. And of course, adding the bells, I think, is a great decision. The ramp package here is second to none. How Far I Go is a card that has come out of left field. The Scar ramp package is wonderful. It really can punish opponents for overextending and going wide, coming in, kind of like clearing out the majority of the board, still being able to be in play most cases. If you have a popsicle, you can actually even get more value out of the Scar. You know, with cards like Rafiki, cards like Curse Mofolk, obviously we don't want to be running too many things into Curse Mofolks and Flins with 1 Scar and then discarding the rest of our hand. But all in all, I think he does a great job. I think this deck is in great position moving forward. I have no doubt that some of the best players in the game will bring this to future tournaments because they'll be a little more fast-paced than I would say the average player has been. I think when you're planning for your next 1K or next 5K or the Lorcana Challenge coming up, this is definitely a deck that I would be absolutely prepared for to see within that metagame. So we had 12 different decks make top 8s, and the crazy thing is 10 of those decks were able to find wins. That's awesome for Disney Lorcana. 10 different decks finding a win in a set championship, picking up the Stitch Enchanted promo, picking up a champion playmat. That's really all you can ask for within a metagame, and explicitly at like a not a casual level. I do not think that these tournaments were ever really meant to be casual, but at a lower competitive level and a smaller tournament on average than what we would expect at like a 5K or a Lorcana Challenge, some of the PPG events, some of the Star City Games events. those events are normally a little more higher, a little more upscale, a little more competitive than I would say that these set championships were. But these set championships were still very competitive tournaments. There were very good players in every single room that they were in. So the idea that you can pick up any one of these decks, Ruby Emerald got a win, Amber Emerald got a win, Sapphire Amethyst got wins. Like all of those decks are probably not something that we're used to seeing be successful within Lorcana, which I think is really, really cool. I'm actually considering doing a video on some of these decks very specifically to showcase them and how interesting I think it was that these particular lists were able to find wins and maybe why. So if you're interested in that, hit me up in the comments and let me know. But aside from that, if we look at here, we got Ruby Amethyst on top with Emerald Steel matching. Same amount of wins. They both had 7 wins from the data points that I found this morning or yesterday. Amber Steel, Ruby Sapphire picking up good successful weekends. Emerald Amethyst and Amber Steel, or an Amethyst Steel, also quite successful. So all in all, pretty good. If we look at here again, the side-by-side comparison, I think it's really important to note there was a drop in everything, of course, because it's less information. So because it's less information, less games played, there are less winners, obviously. But you can see, Emerald Steel was able to rise up and match. Ruby Sapphire was still able to compete. And then Amber Steel was doing well, but Sapphire Steel had 0 wins this weekend, or at least 0 reported wins. So because of that, that's an interesting thing that fell off completely. Amethyst Steel holding its weight. Ruby Amber, Sapphire Amethyst, Ruby Emerald, and Amber Emerald all also finishing out with successful championship playmats. Now with the winners, let's check out some of the other winning deck lists. Amethyst Emerald picked up a win at a 43-player event at Great Lakes Gaming. Through the last couple weeks, we have seen plenty of success through the Amethyst Emerald within the set championships. I think it really does punish certain opponents that were trying to play more grindy matchups or predicting the wrong metagame. This deck truly has the ability to just outclass Ruby Sapphire opponents. If they're trying their best to grind out games against more control metagames, and you come in and you're just like, hey, I'm gonna play my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and really disrupt everything you're doing, really punish you for not having a great answer to Ursula. Just a lot going on here. The point out to some specific tech in this list are the Tinkerbells that grant evasive and have evasive, and of course the Wildcat, which is a emerald way of dealing with items. I don't know personally if this card is necessary at all. I think that if you have to worry about items, you're in a much worse position, and you're better off just utilizing that slot for like any 2-lore character if possible, or even rounding out the characters that we have in front of us, playing a 4th Rafiki, playing a 4th Chernobog's follower, maybe even a 4th Kit. Yeah, any other particular action might have been better than this. I just don't think that you ever want to be in a position where like you want to use Wildcat's ability, whereas if you just threaten the game further, you're probably in a better position overall. Aside from that, this list again is now showcasing that it actually has 2 forms. We're seeing this more aggressive form, and then we're now seeing a form with like Prince John's and Sudden Chills and things like that, a little more Discord oriented. That was actually one of the 2 decks that I lost to this weekend. I had a really good run this weekend in set champs with only 2 losses total, and the version of Emerald Amethyst that played Prince John's and stuff is actually what was able to kind of take down my Ruby Amethyst deck the other day. So because of that, again, versatile deck ideas, versatile concepts, different ways to build decks. These are the decks that we are seeing winning tournaments, because I do think the best players in the room on average are winning these tournaments. And what they're doing is they're utilizing their knowledge of the local game, of the local scene, of the week that they've been playing, and kind of predicting very accurately what they need to be successful in these tournaments. And this deck really has the ability to pivot, again, like 10 or 12 cards and be not a different deck, but definitely a different deck that attacks you on a different way and can make it even more difficult for opponents to play against you. All in all, shout out to this player. Congratulations. Move on to the next one. Amethyst Steel had 3 reported wins this weekend. This one comes at a 42-player event at the Rule Zero game store. Again, Steel Amethyst here, showcasing its versatility as well. All of these decks, once again, are about versatility. This list in particular is a more mid-range, being able to just utilize the Amethyst core package, complementing it quite well with the Steel package, having cards like Robin Hood, basically saying, hey, I have 8 Mana Mim Foxes in my deck. Whenever I can shift on 3 onto my little Robin Hood, I don't think this list actually had 8 Along Game Zeus, but that's what's registered here. Kind of gave me a laugh. I'll definitely let Inkdex know that that's a mistake. But all in all, I think that this list, again, is something that we've seen an evolution of. Jafar had success this weekend. I had seen people, announce that they had won with Jafar decks. I've seen the aggro budget deck be successful. This is just another version of the deck, another evolution of it. We're going to consistently see this probably continue to evolve even more and more as we come into the final month of Disney Lorcana's Into the Inklands metagame. Where would we be without Amethyst Ruby? Robert Serpay, TFM team member, picked up a win at the 41 player at Quibbles. This event was honestly very interesting. In addition to the stitches and the playmats being up for grabs to tournament winners, there was also artwork that was given out. I'll actually put some of the different things that I found on screen here for you guys to see. The other cool thing about it was there was a cosplay tournament, a lot of really fun stuff going on in the Maryland area. If you're in that area, you should definitely check out Quibble's Facebook page. It looked to be really trying to get into Lorcana in its fullest, promote the game as much as possible, and give out really cool and unique prizes through the different artwork and things like that. I think that's really cool whenever we find new tournament organizers this way, really committing to Disney Lorcana, and I love to see it. If we look at Rob's list here, the number one card that probably stands out to everyone is It Calls Me. It Calls Me is a 1-cost song, which of course means you can sing it. And it reads, draw a card, then choose up to 3 cards from chosen opponent's discard and shuffle it into their deck. This is a card that Rob is very high on. He's been trying it in all sorts of different Amethyst lists. He really likes the idea of being able to draw a card and then put 3 dead cards back into his opponent's deck, making it more difficult for his opponents to find their outs. When in doubt, it can also add goats back to your deck or rabbits back to your deck or even queen's castles back to your deck to have a more threatening endgame in specific matchups. Aside from that, this is a pretty straightforward list. Going down to 2 Be Prepared and 1 Scar was a decision that we made as a team. Felt good. I did it. Rob did it. A few others on the team also were successful doing it. All in all, I think that those are the real nice things. The other addition here is Pascal. Pascal kind of removing some of the Olafs from the deck and maybe even some of the other 1-drops. But playing 10 1-drops is another choice here. Going wide against certain strategies has been proven to be a better line for us in most of our tournament success recently. Rob was just one of many this weekend to pick up wins with the Ruby Amethyst mid-range deck. The team, Rob, George, myself, Melissa, Drew, the list goes on. A lot of true success through Ruby Amethyst from Team TFM this weekend, and I can't wait to talk about that further in another video. I personally believe that set championships are the best thing to happen to Disney Lorcana. In all honesty, the last few weeks, the amount of excitement around the game on Twitter, on Facebook, in Discords, the amount of pictures I had seen of players being so excited to win a stitch, win a playmat, showcase it to their friends, be excited. It was just created so many nice memories for the game. The amount of new players that I spoke to over the course of the last few weeks is also a great sign for the game. Just so many positive vibes from this. I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. For me, I had a wonderful time. Last week I only got to play in one event. I went 2-2 drop. This weekend, I was able to go undefeated the other night, win myself a stitch and a playmat. Then I had a weird event where I went 1-1-1, decided to go home. And then, of course, yesterday I was able to go undefeated in Swiss, pick up a stitch in top 4, and then lose to another Emerald Steel player. But I had a great time. Even if I didn't win yesterday, if I didn't win a stitch yesterday, I still would have had so much fun meeting the community, enjoying the game with everyone, seeing the excitement around the game. It was all very, very positive. Some of these awesome things and pictures I had seen from the weekend. A friend of the channel, 8 App Rated MTG, had a crazy successful run, picking up 6 stitches. Dick Burns and George down there picking up 6 and 7 stitches and playmats. Oh, Glore. Melissa from Team TFM was able to win 4 stitches over the last few weeks. I'm not sure if there's any other woman in the game that was able to do that, but I'm going to be interviewing Melissa coming up on the channel soon. We'll be discussing the Team Ruby Amethyst deck and her success with it. Eric, the gamer, is another person I'm going to be interviewing shortly, discussing his success within the game and how he might have been the first player to win 4 stitches in 48 hours. My own success there with Dick Burns. Rob's beautiful artwork and his Lucifer doll from his cosplay. Some of the great things. Scott picking up a win as well. And of course, another 6 beautiful picture there with showcasing all stitches and the playmats that RJ was able to win. Just a lot of really awesome, photos that I was able to find on different forms of social media. Shout out to all those players and honestly so many more. There was a ton of excitement going into this weekend, and I think it delivered. I really, really do. What's next for Disney Lorcana? The Lorcana Challenges. Before we get there, this weekend we do have SCG Richmond in Richmond, Virginia, hosted by Star City Games. There's a good chance that you're going to see a lot of successful players in attendance in the SCGs. David Nunes, George, Dick Burns, maybe Ryan Miles, maybe myself. We'll see how it goes. But all in all, I'm very excited to get through this week, which I believe will be the last true pieces of data before we get to the Lorcana Challenges. After that, there aren't really any more major events coming up. So this is the final weekend, and this weekend's results, I think, will really, truly dictate how a lot of people plan to attack the Lorcana Challenge in just a few weeks. Thank you guys so much for watching today. Lorcana is at an all-time high for me. Playing the game is at an all-time high, I think, and it's only just getting started. Set Champs were the first official organized play events by Ravensburger. Lorcana Challenge is the next. Only good things to come. If you like this video, you should probably check out last week's video showcasing other decks. I also do this every single week on the channel, showcasing the best decks in the meta each week. Thank you guys so much for watching. See you in the next one.